Hey there, welcome to Her Truth Revealed, Unraveling Our Midlife Era. I'm your host, Wonderful Morrison. This space is for the woman who's done pretending, done hiding, and ready to step fully into her truth. Midlife isn't about fading into the background. It's a time where resilience lights the way and authenticity becomes the loudest voice in the room. In this season of our lives, we are more than just survivors. We are creators, revolutionaries, and unapologetic women rewriting the rules. I've been through my battles, rebuilding from loss, betrayal, and heartache. But here's the truth. Every challenge, every tear, and every setback has led me to this moment of profound transformation. Together, we're going to dive into raw, real conversations that shatter stereotypes, tackle the tough stuff, and embrace the powerful magic that is midlife. So, if you're ready to live this chapter with boldness and joy, hit subscribe. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it and leave a review so we can keep this revolution going. Ladies, no more masks, no more apologies, just the truth of who we are. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to another episode of Her Truth Revealed, where we have conversations, real, raw, honest conversations about the journey of this human experience called women in midlife and what we have to offer the world and what the world has offered us in terms of our lessons learned and the things that we turn around and show everyone else to help them through their journey and process of it all. And today I'm super excited because this woman I met through a very trusted friend, Phyllis, is changing the way we are viewing the world of healing and trauma and acceptance and the wholeness of being a human being. Because I think there's a lot of talk out there, right? We live in such a noisy world. Y'all, there's 8 billion people. How do you know who to listen to and what to process? And then you got to deal with things that are happening inside you. So before I can go on any further, thank you so much for following us. Thank you for listening to us. All our social media platforms have been growing because of your love and need to support us. And we value you so, so much. Please continue on because the world needs to hear what all of my guests have to say. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Phyllis to the show. Hello there.
Well, hello. And so grateful to be a guest with you today.
I'm so grateful that you're here because I think that you have incredible insight, knowledge, and expertise in the arena that is the biggest subject right now is the world of healing. So tell us a little bit about your journey of why this has been the space that you have put all of your energy and focus into.
Yeah, like so many people who have become, therapists or worked in some kind of healing art, the motivation was, of course, my own healing. And, when I was young, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And the model for me was to get married and have children. It really wasn't career. But women were in my neck of the woods were supposed to go to college, and I did. And I always loved learning and I always loved writing. But I had significant trauma in my childhood that really put a shadow over my life. And I really didn't understand myself. I didn't understand why I suffered some of the anxiety and depression that I had. I just felt very alone and very different from everybody else, which is, I think, one of the legacies of trauma is that you're really not alone, but you feel alone because you really don't know anybody else there is going through what you're going through. And in the world that I grew up in, it really seemed important to look good and look like you had it together and look like you knew what you were doing, right? Right. So it wasn't really cool to show that you were in distress or to talk about it. And when I was young, nobody talked about psychology. And when I first heard about somebody going to a therapist, it was kind of like, you shouldn't need that. that's a sign of weakness. You should be able to get your life together yourself. So it wasn't until my 30s that I actually started to remember some of what happened to me and did go to therapy. And it was very life changing for me to uncover what had happened and really begin to realize that our early conditioning has so much to do with how we feel about ourselves, the choices
So
we
true.
make, the reactions we have to people, and who we're attracted to. So my first marriage was really a recapitulation of some of the elements of my childhood, of being drawn to someone who just was unable to love. And we were both really wounded people who had no idea about our wounds. And so we just kind of replayed a dysfunctional relationship with each other. But going to therapy really allowed me to leave. I finally found my voice and I finally was able to say, no more of this. I'm not doing this anymore. And that started a whole journey for me of healing, of really undoing some of the really negative beliefs I had about myself. I really thought I was unlovable. I thought I was unworthy. I thought I'd always be alone. And in the process of my healing, I really made a very, very deep connection to what I call my spiritual self, not so much in a religious sense, but in the sense of a really deep connection to my own essence, my own soul's path, my own inner wisdom and intuition about what guidance was needed in my life. And so those two things really went together for me. So I can't stress enough how life-changing it can be to really go deep into yourself and uncover the roots of whatever your conditioning was that sort of shaped your life in a dysfunctional way, because healing is really possible.
And I love what you really said about the journey of, didn't figure it out right away. Cause I think we put a lot of like when we start healing, me, for example, I thought, gosh, if I had just known this sooner, if I had learned this when I was younger, but really you're perpetuating the same pain if you're saying that. And what you're saying is like whenever it's happening, it's supposed to be at that space because you went through heartbreaking experience of letting go of a marriage that you assumably based on society and family and your surroundings, your environment was what we're supposed to do. And
Right.
there's so much everybody out there uses that language. It's like, well, we're supposed to or we're conditioned in. You don't really recognize that until you're out of it though, right? Like you
Right.
can hear it and be like, oh yeah, but you could still be in it and not realize that you are in that. And that's so tell us about like what I love about what you offer is you also have books that you've written. Now, that I think is like, the entry point for some people who know or can sense like, oh gosh, I need to change something, but
Mm-hmm.
aren't really ready to go all in yet or just like talk to somebody because it's just where they're at. And what prompted you to go into the book direction? Because you have multiple. Tell us about
Right.
those.
Yeah, I love that question because one of the things that really helped me before I ever got into any healing modality myself was reading books. And it was reading books by
Yeah.
other people who had made healing journeys. And I was very drawn to that. Even before I knew what kind of a healing journey I was going to make, I found myself going to the library. You went to the library in those days. And I would take out biographies and autobiographies by people who had overcome great odds.
Mm,
And I found myself just like absorbing that, like, and really what I absorbed was hope. And I think that was a really important thing. I think we need each other to feel that there's really hope. Somebody else did it. Somebody else survived great odds and they
agree.
reclaimed their life and they expressed their greatest creativity and they found love or they found some other kind of healing. So yeah, and for me, I was writing was the one way that I connected with myself when I was young. I don't know why that was because nobody suggested that. I think it just sort of came from within. I felt drawn to writing poetry. I wrote these little short snapshots of different experiences in my life. And I didn't do anything with them. I didn't share them. I just wrote them for myself. And it was a way that I made my way safely into my internal world. And I would discover things about myself by writing. So I kept lots and lots of journals. And when I started therapy, I kept a journal, and it was like, I'm going to keep a journal of this process. And if I come out of this, and I did not believe necessarily that I would, I didn't know that I would find light at the end of the tunnel. But I said to myself, if I come through this and I really feel like I'm healing, I want to share that journey with other people the way people have shared their journeys with me. So that was really the impetus for writing the first two books, which are A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire. And those books really
Good titles.
chronicle, thank you. Thank you. And they really chronicle like some of the autobiographical things that I went through. And then when I started with actually with hypnosis. And that's what started to bring some of the memories even more into my conscious life. And I decided to become a therapist out of that. But the first two books are really about that healing journey and how I made this incredible connection to my inner self. I call it divine guidance. You can call it intuition. You can call it your soul. You can call it God, whatever it means to you. But it wasn't a dogma. It was my own intuitive voice of guidance and wisdom speaking to me. And I really believe we can all do that in our own way. Whether somebody's going to get the same messages about their life that I got, probably not, because we each have our own path and we're all individuals, and there's no dogma that you have to ascribe to have that connection. So those are
Yeah.
the first two books. And it was actually very healing for me to write them as well as to share them. And then my last book is a different book, and I also felt very drawn to. I had the idea for my last book a long time ago, and I finally wrote it a few years ago, and it was published last year. And that was bringing these healing principles and paradigms and tools and skills to national conversation. Because just like we can thrive in a really healthy family, or we can be injured by an unhealthy or abusive or dysfunctional or neglectful family in our own lives, we can thrive in a healthy country. We can thrive in a healthy business. We can thrive in a healthy school or house of worship where people are, care for each other and treat each other well, and where we're loved and valued, and where people have some healthy skills for navigating conflict without injuring each other. So I wanted to bring some of those principles into national conversation because I see so much in the family of America that really could be healed and upgraded for our mutual benefit and our safety, really.
Yeah. And what a big ask, right? From you. Because I know, like for me and for the women that are going through the healing, is in the beginning, you feel so isolated in it. Like you're the only one who have gone through that particular trauma, which
Right,
is true. But the emotional spaces are very relatable
right,
with other people. But then there's that shame of like, gosh, I got to admit it. Now I got to say it.
right,
Now I've got to put it to the
right.
next level of like, it's not just between me and the therapist or me and the coach. It's between me and then somewhere else. Right. And then to put it on paper. Right. And I think this is where so much of this current language is about being authentic, being
Right,
in the space of authenticity.
right.
True authenticity, I believe, is the most courageous act that we do in this third chapter of life,
Hmm.
because we know how we can survive. We know that we can make money, have a life, keep a roof over our head. But now that next level of like, okay, now it's time to share it with the world.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
world could be two people, the world could be 8 billion
Right,
people, but it's a
right.
world that's outside of your own that we're asking for. How could you help us? Because one voice is powerful, but 2, 3, 4 voices that get behind what you're asking, right? What you put yourself out there. Like Phyllis, I know the courage it took to take those journals and then make it public, and then have your process of healing, put that out in public, and then now
Hmm.
talk about it in a way where you're not in the wound or wound anymore,
Right,
right? You're in the
right.
scar now. How do we do that for ourselves if we want to follow in that space of what you're saying is to put value out there, to be inclusive, to love one
Right,
another
right.
regardless of where we are from? I often hear it so much, but you're also asking a lot of scared 8-year-olds in adult bodies. to show up.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the first things I would say is you don't have to force anything. We do really like, yes, it's lovely to like push yourself a little harder to be kind or generous or whatever. And I would never stop anyone from doing that. But what I would say that I think is more bedrock is that if you really give yourself the opportunity to heal, to find a safe person, whether it's a therapist or you do some other healing modality, whatever avenue you take to really dive in and heal that wounded 8-year-old, who's scared, who doesn't feel lovable, who doesn't feel worthy, who's afraid of being hurt or being made to look foolish or stupid or whatever kind
Yeah.
of negative messages we've got. If you really do the work to heal that part of yourself, I can guarantee you that your greatest self is naturally going to want to come forward, because that's the point of healing, is that who we really are underneath our wounds, who we were born to be, whatever it is, whether you were born to just be a great parent or a fantastic writer, or you were born to clean up the water all over the world, or just take care of your pet. Whatever it is that you were born to do in your greatest self-expression will emerge from peeling back the layers of wounding that have covered it over. And I can't stress that enough, because I've never seen that not happen. When people heal, they want to give in some form. So, you see a lot, you've probably heard this a lot, like in the world of addiction, so many people who have been in recovery become addictions counselors because they want to help
Oh, yeah.
others make that journey.
Right.
And I became a therapist because going to therapy changed my life.
Yeah, I felt that so deeply when you said it, because I don't think there's enough people saying out there. There's so much of like, do it now, get on the bandwagon, heal, which we're all desperate to do. But I think there needs to be some compassion in how we're saying it, like what you just said. If you just take that first step, you will inevitably, from the inside out, the way we're designed, your healing becomes the giving to the world.
100%.
And
A
that's the
100%.
courage, right? The
Yeah.
courage really is not something we seek out, or it's not something that we, train for. It really just is a natural mechanism
Yeah.
inside us to give in and surrender to the courage, because we are feeling healed and understood and seen and respected, which is what healing is supposed. So tell us a little bit about this thing. I just heard it yesterday or maybe a couple days ago. There is this word called toxic, right? And they've been placing it in front of things like toxic healing, toxic resilience, toxic masculinity, toxic, right? There's all of these words that I have been hearing that it starts off with toxic first. What do you say to that space where maybe somebody is, again, in a desired place to heal, but then maybe there's never an end point? It's just constant. Is that even really a thing? Is there such a thing as toxic healing or toxic resilience?
I've never actually heard those terms. What do they mean? Do you know what they mean?
Well, what in the world of toxic resilience, it's when people just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and not
Mm,
realizing that, the buried trauma is trying to emerge, but how we're seeing it is in our bodies. Like we get sick or we have
right.
an emotional breakdown. And in the toxic healing world, what I've heard is how it's framed is where we just keep seeking and seeking and seeking, right? We're signing up for the next thing, signing up for the next thing, signing
Yeah.
up for the next thing,
Yeah.
but never really coming to a fruition of that healing. What
Well,
what do you think that's about?
I would say it this way, that it's not healing. That's what you're
Mm,
describing as not healing. When you're really in and I think most of our healing, at least in some phase of it, not in all phases of it, we do with a safe person. I think there's places, especially when there's massive trauma in people's lives, you just can't go there alone. You have to have somebody holding a safe, caring, non-judgmental space around you. And that's why it's so important for anyone and everyone who can go on that healing journey today, because we need each other. We need safe people who are in a healing journey to hold our hands along the way. I couldn't have done the work that I did by myself. There's no way I could have done it alone.
Right. Yeah. Me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
So it's not, I think it's sad to use the term toxic healing because it puts two words together that are like oil and water. They don't mix.
Yeah.
Toxicity and healing don't mix. It's not healing if it's toxic. So
Yeah.
if the process you're in keeps you dependent on the other person, if it keeps
Oof.
you, right? If it
That's
keeps
good.
you feeling like you haven't made it and there's always more to do and you're always climbing the mountain, but you never get to any like place of real connection with your own inner wisdom. Because
That's
just
so good.
just like anything else, you don't, I mean, unless you had a chronic condition and you always needed to go to a doctor at certain intervals, and there's no harm, no fault in that. But with our psyches, we're supposed to get to a place where we don't need the therapist anymore. They're supposed to be happy when we're ready to leave because we've found that guidance within ourselves. We've built the skills to navigate life's challenges more or less. We have something inside of ourselves that has some kind of, real resilience that really can speak to us and guide us. And, I've had clients say to me, and I love when they say to me, I was in this situation and I asked myself what Phyllis would say. Because what they were really saying was, what would my own inner guidance now tell me? They didn't call me and ask me what I would say. They looked for the guide within themselves. So it's not healing if it's toxic. It's not healing if you're still, pushing on and being symptomatic and something else needs to happen. Does that make sense?
Complete sense. Because I remember when my coach said, you're getting to the point where you're not going to need me. And I kind
Right,
of panicked. I was like, wait,
right.
what? No. But, she was right. She called it at the point of like, when because I've gotten to the point in my healing journey where self trust has become my North Star. And
Exactly.
she was right. It's less and less of like needing somebody else's validation. And it's more about my internal, okay, let's take a moment. Let's validate my feelings right now. What is this about? What's happening? What's going on? And I guess that, see, again, we always need to hear it in other formats because, the way that language works, it has so many roots to like how we learned it as a child, like, right? Like, for instance, when she told me, sometimes you need to be selfish, I was like, wait, no, because my
Right,
understanding of selfishness
right.
didn't come from a positive space. Right. And so I thought, wait, hold on. Is this narcissism? That's what I hear when I hear selfish. And I had to really redefine that space of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So tell us, Phyllis, why we should read your book. Why do I want to read your book? Why do I want to hear what you have to say? What is the space that you exist in that allows me to see that you are walking your talk?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you do?
Are you talking about my present book or all the books, or because they're different? The books are
No, like,
very
what's
different.
your title? What's your credential that allows me to be like, she knows what she's talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what I would say is, like I just have so much experience. I went through the dark night of the soul. I did years of therapy, really intensive work, and I didn't know if there would be light at the end of the tunnel, but I knew that I was never going to stop until I found out. And then, I did years and years and years, over 30 years of work with clients, and so I had tons of experience. But I'm not here to toot my own horn. I'm really here to tell you, I just want to share my experience. Your experience may be different. Somebody else may have a different lens on the healing journey or a different contribution to make to what's going on in America today. Mine is a psychological lens really based in all of my experience. And I think I have a lot of experience, that feels worth sharing because I've seen it work, and I think that's what is really important that I can say. I mean, I've worked with clients who have abuse stories that you would not believe. They're so terrible. They just feel like, how could one person have endured that? And of course, we know people all over the world are enduring terrible, terrible things. But in my own office, in front of me, someone who's still functioning in life, holding down a job, having a relationship, and they're telling me they witnessed murders when they were little,
Yeah.
and then
Wow. Heavy things.
and then I see them do the work and dare to go down into the pain and be held and reprocess what happened to them and find that innocent, pure part of them that is not what happened to them, that was there before anything happened to them, and reclaim their lives and recreate their lives. And none of us do it perfectly. I don't do it perfectly. I would be the first person to tell you I make mistakes. I have things I need to apologize for, but it's easier and easier to do that, you
Yeah.
know? And I see people reclaim their lives and be able to express love who never felt love and form relationships that they never thought possible. And that's true for me. I have a
That's
marriage
such a
today.
beautiful thing.
Yeah. And so we need to give each other, it's coming back to that hope. And that's why that's part of the subtitle of my present book, a new approach to hope and healing for a nation in crisis. We need hope. We need to know that other people have made journeys that have taken them beyond the worst of their own trauma and the worst of their own symptoms.
Yes. And that I think is hope is it's the most powerful force in moving forward. Like the last, I'd say 10 years, like some of the biggest shows out there and movies are like zombies, right? This
Right.
whole idea of, getting to where the population is less of real human beings and more of these sort of monstrous chasing you down. And it really kind of shows us the psyche of human
Right.
existence, of
Right.
sort of like what happens to us if we continue on where we're sort of passive about how we can support. But so much of it is this inner work that we've got to do. So we need people like you who understand the language of inner work, understand the process of inner work, all the things that when we think about our own trauma, when I started that journey, I was like, can't I just keep doing what I'm doing? And actually, the body's like, no, not at all.
Right. Right.
Not
Right.
even close. And I'm like, but I'm exercising, I'm eating the right things. And my body's like, great story, but not enough, right?
Right.
Like, I
Right.
need relief from all of this trauma that's been stored in your body
Right.
type of situation. So tell us a little bit about, this podcast is titled Her Truth Revealed. When do you think your truth was revealed to you?
I think it started it's hard to say because there were moments early on in my life that were very light filled, where I just felt like divine grace just kind of entered my heart. And I knew that experience of incredible love that was beyond anything human. But I couldn't recreate that and I couldn't live it. And I didn't know how to find it. So it would be sort of like, hold on, there's hope out there. So it wasn't really until I would say midlife that and it was because I had, been drawn into a relationship with my first husband that was very, very emotionally hurtful to me and not healthy, not healthy. It was a recreation of my early wounding. And I think and I had 3 little children and I was at rock bottom. And I think sometimes that level of pain actually can be the doorway into healing because it's at that level of pain that we say, help me God, or help me soul, or help me my heart, or help me someone, where we're really open because nothing else has worked. And it was just, I think, because of the amount of pain that I was living in on an emotional level, that something else cracked open. And I began to actually remember what had happened to me in early childhood. And I sought help. And at that time in my life, and like I said, when I was young, people didn't go to therapy and they saw therapy
Yeah.
as a weakness. So what I
Yeah.
would say to everybody listening, if you don't know this, it takes incredible strength. It takes incredible courage to really dive in and do the work on your own most painful places. So it was in midlife I began to remember. I went back to graduate school. I was actually in a hypnosis class when I started to have even more memories. And so I was in school and doing my own inner work. raising my children by myself. So it was a really, really intense time, but it was an amazing time. It was amazing. And I just can't say enough how powerful that healing journey can be. And I'll tell you why. Because as painful as many of those moments were in that process, and they were scary, they were painful, there's something in us that needs to know the truth. And it is so liberating to discover your own truth. And that's really what kept me going.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. And I connect with that so deeply. But why do you think we're so afraid of our truth?
Well, I think we're afraid of pain as a society. Look at how many people self medicate, really just go overboard with their addictions, with their distractions, with their toys, with their workaholism, with their people pleasing. We
Yeah,
don't have a culture that actually venerates, honors the process
yeah.
of facing your pain and knowing that that's actually the hero or the heroine's journey. And I think that's what part of what we're changing here, because all of that stuff that we do to avoid it just causes more pain and just causes
It
us to
just,
keep
yeah, it just makes the journey a bit longer too.
right. And I've had people, so many people who come to therapy and have said, I just don't want to start crying because I feel like if I start crying, I'm never going to stop.
Yeah,
And I'm always able to presence because I know that's not true. I know that if you do allow yourself to cry, you will move through it. And especially if you're in the presence of a safe, skilled, non-judgmental helper.
I agree. I agree. I think that everything you say is so relatable to our own internal personal experiences. It's just really good to hear it from someone that, one, has gone through it, two, has helped countless people through it, and continues to do the work themselves. Because I think that's the other piece, right? Is do it's never like the pinnacle of all pinnacles.
Right.
You
It's
don't
not.
ever reach the mountaintop, so to speak,
Right.
but you do get one layer and one more layer and one layer closer. So, Phyllis, as we're getting close to the end here, I'm going to ask this question that I ask all my guests is, let's say you're walking down the street and you walk into the coffee shop and you see 20 Phyllis.
Hmm. Hmm.
What do you think you could say to her that she would listen to?
Well, I don't know if she would listen. So I can't tell you for sure, but I think I would tell her you're a beautiful human being. You are not what you feel you are. You are not what you've been conditioned to believe you are. You're not unlovable. You're not invisible. You're not powerless. You have every right to be here and you have great gifts to offer. And hang in there, hang in there with yourself because it's going to unfold. You just trust yourself along the way. You be with what is, you surrender and transform and follow. I would really say this to anybody because we all, or I don't know if we all, but I think many people sort of have an idea of where their gifts lie, but they're not necessarily encouraged to follow them. I knew when I was really young that writing was my path. I knew it. I don't think everybody does, but I was lucky to have a few people that really encouraged me with that. And of course, I could have used more, and I could have used more encouragement for myself. So I would say if you have a calling, whatever it is, if you love animals, if you love nature, if you love cooking, if you love art, if you love just interacting with people and lighting up their day, follow your calling because it's most likely connected to your most essential self, which is your greatest guide and healer from within. I wish I had heard all that.
I know. I'm listening to it. I feel like you're speaking directly to me. Like, I'm not 25. However, I need to hear that even now.
Yeah.
Even now at this
Yeah.
age, and with even with all the healing, it's still so good to hear that somebody sees you. And I think that's the only way to be seen, is to see yourself through it,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
although you were talking to your 25-year-old self, I felt like you were speaking directly to me, of like,
Hmm.
yes, okay, thank you. Thank you for seeing me. And that's all we all are really desired to be in this life, is to be seen.
I can't emphasize that enough. I'm so glad you said that, because one of the things I wrote about in my book, and I learned as a therapist, and nobody taught this in graduate school. I learned this being a therapist and being a client, is that that's actually the greatest healing thing you can do for another human being. All the skills, all the tools, all the psychological understanding, EMDR, inner child work, hypnosis, those things are all fabulous and needed, but we really need them to be helped with those skills and those tools and those understandings by people who actually see that underneath all our wounding and all the ways we've been wounding to other people is a beautiful, essential self that is waiting to shine in this world. And it's the greatest gift you can give another human being. I really think that.
I feel so emotional right now because I love what you just said about through the layers of our own wounding and how we wound other people.
We do.
To be seen at that level, that is the cracking open of the higher version of self.
Yeah.
The highest version of self is the
Yeah.
only way that version of me could show up is if one person, just one person, allows me to be seen.
That's right.
Then it's like, I am that version now. And I don't know how to not be, because one person saw me.
Right.
The
That's
real
right.
version of me. And I want to thank you for this experience, that in your knowledge and your expertise. And I just want to share with the world right now, for Phyllis and I to actually meet today took legions of like angels, because we've been trying to connect for days, and it was something else, technology, it was this, it was that. And I really believe it's because the more people can hear you say to them, as if they're the only person in a room, that their wounds and how they wound is not who they are, is the first step into seeking our hero within. I believe that to be if that's the only thing you heard in this entire conversation, I feel like I pushed through to get here for that purpose. And so thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Because it's just really my heart's desire to share what has been most meaningful and most healing for me.
And folks, this is why when we're doing our due diligence, it's not really about the research. Okay, that's all great. Research the person to death, do the whole thing. But I think our intuition naturally already knows. Yeah. I did not know Phyllis a month ago. I did not know Phyllis 7 days ago. But did I need her in my life currently right now? Just like everybody who's listening to this? Absolutely, because our intuitive energy was calling to each other. Right. I didn't need to know your credentials, and, to just kind of go back to, well, when do I know it's time for me, or when is the right place? I think we need to stop always being so logical about it and get in touch with our heart and say, what do you need, heart? Who do you need? Because it will find that person out there. Just like I found you out of 8 billion people to talk to. I'm here talking to you. So with that being said, thank you so much for trusting us. Again, if this conversation was of any value to you, I would highly suggest that you write us a little awesome review. And like my mother said, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. So there's that. And then also share this with as many people who need to hear that who they are is enough, just in the language that Phyllis was sharing. And if this isn't enough for you, she got 3 books out. Pick them up. Pick them all up. And we'll have all that information on our show notes. Again, thank you so much, Phyllis, for being here. Thank you for bringing your energy, your expertise, but most importantly, thank you for bringing love.
Well, thank you. And I would say the same to you. Thank you for bringing your energy, your expertise, and your profound love, because it really radiates from you. And I really feel grateful and honored to be here talking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, have a great rest of your day and life, hour, minute experience. Until next time, bye. Thank you so much for being with me on today's journey. If you felt something resonate, if you saw yourself in this conversation, please take a moment to subscribe. Share it with a friend who needs this space and leave a review. It helps others find us, and it's a small way you can be a part of this powerful movement. Ladies, this isn't just a podcast. It's a community, a revolution, a place where midlife women come together to embrace our hard-earned wisdom and vibrant truth. So thank you for being part of this. Remember, it's time. It's time to step into our truth. No more holding back. Midlife is ours to own, and it's only getting started. So, until next time, take a breath, honor your journey, and live with audacity, courage, and joy. This is our time, our truth, unraveled, revealed, and celebrated.